Hey, it's Larissa. Welcome to Goblins of Discord. I recorded this video about a year ago for a workshop that I ran, but I'm currently revamping and redoing the entire workshop. So I am releasing a bunch of these videos for free to YouTube. So I hope that these are helpful. And this one's specifically about the defense mechanisms and the kind of self-sabotaging behaviors that each type has. So this isn't positive. This isn't going to make you feel good when you watch it, although you might have some aha moments. And how I like to look at it is that once you're able to fully face like your own horrible personality type, because we're all like each personality type is horrible in its own way. And other types seem less horrible through our lens, right, than what we're doing. So whatever triggers you is always information for you to look at, like, oh my God, am I like that? And when you start to look at it and you are just like, you know what? These patterns are not me. This is personality defense strategy. This is a coping mechanism. This is the ego trying to keep me safe. It's not me. Then you can just be like, you know what? I love and accept that this is how I survived all these years and I have no resistance to it. I allow it. I forgive it. I accept it. And then that's when you can start to make tweaks and start putting yourself on a different course, closer to where you want to be. Of course, like if your life's perfect and everything's hunky dory, then you don't really need to do self work. But this is for people who are feeling stuck or just maybe just very curious about what the underlying patterns and behaviors are. I use information about the defense mechanisms that already exist out there about what each Enneagram type is doing, but then I've created my own spin on it, and I kind of disagree with some of the stuff that's already out there, and I've tweaked some of it. So some of the names on this are really cringe, and I apologize, but I'm not gonna redo this. It already exists, so I'm just gonna put it on YouTube. And if you want the workbook that goes along with this, that's not about the material in this video, but it's sort of what to do now that you know what you're doing. It's just a very simple, a couple of simple strategies to help you be more at peace and accepting with what you're doing, and also help release that resistance and reframe things. So that workbook is available in my membership portal, which you can join right now. And I just started it, so I'm continuing to grow it and expand it. And there will be live calls, learning how to type and other kinds of things in there. There's already a bit of stuff in there. So, and you get discounts on typing services too. So basically, it pays for itself already. If you decide you want to get typed by me, then it already pays for itself. So I hope that you'll check that out. And if you have any aha moments or takeaways from this video, please post below, like and subscribe. Cringe, cringe, cringe. Thank you so much for your support. Welcome to What the Fuck is My Personality Doing? Dear God, why? So one of the main ways you can stop operating out of autopilot, quit the shit patterns, the personality type bullshit, and actually get what you want is by being, actually, so two of the main ways, I don't want to have to fix that, is by being with the discomfort of not operating out of your personality trap. So it will be uncomfortable to integrate this for sure. But I have tools in the next part that will help you and will make it so much easier and make it feel good and make it feel freeing. So, not operating out of your shadow. So, that is when we're triggered, right? When we're like, that's bad, I'm not like that. Or you're envious, you wish you could be like that, but it's like, oh, I'm never going to be like that. Those are shadow thoughts. So, just being conscious, making different choices, regulating your nervous system in the moment with different modalities like breath, tapping, affirmations. So they're all in here, they're all in this course. And integrating the opposite of your personality's false belief. So the opposite of your personality's false belief is the shadow. So it's the opposite of, if I'm not this way, I'm not me. If I'm not this way, I don't exist. And we'll get more into that in the technique part. So maybe this sounds simple on paper, but it actually requires some bravery and determination, which is why most people who learn the Enneagram don't actually use it for self-growth, because it's like easier and maybe it feels more fun to chit chat and shit talk and shit post and just like read about it and study it, but not actually do anything with it. But not you. You came here for transformation. You came here to unlock. Like, this is literally the reason that I am still into the Enneagram. I'm a 7. And I've been in this quagmire for years now, and it's because of how I see it as a key to unlocking next levels of self. And I can use it with all of the mindset stuff. So it's so valuable when you're actually using it for self-work. So I'm going to give a quick overview of the way that the personality's belief structure creates behaviors and defense mechanisms. These beliefs and behaviors create the shadow. So I'm kind of being repetitive in some parts, but it's just to make sure that it gets through, you grasp it, because once it's grasped, you know? So the defense mechanisms come from Freud's psychoanalytic theories and have been correlated to the Enneagram theory by multiple sources and evolved over time with other people's ideas. So Fritz Perls, Oscar Ushazo, Helen Palmer, Naranjo, etc. I won't be getting into any of that. I'm just going to apply them and how I see them as useful. And I've also added behaviors that I just happen to notice in each of those types. So if you want to study them further, that's a list of some people. So I'm not sharing this information in the upcoming slides to shame anyone or be judgmental, because we're all doing at least one, if not 3 or more of these patterns. I'm using the Enneagram as a framework to show you how to spot patterns, unuseful beliefs, and shadow at a much quicker pace than if you're just doing it from like a generic journaling prompt or waiting for something to happen before you address it. So you can use everything from like the first module from the first shadow workshop, and it's amazing. However, this is like a cheat code. Like, you get to do it way quicker if you apply this information to shadow work. Like, it's cheat codes. The whole thing that I do is about cheat codes. I'm trying to hack the matrix. So each type's flawed belief, which is if I am not this, I don't exist. If I'm not this, I'm not me. If I'm not this, I'm not safe. So one of those will resonate with you more. And what happens because of that belief, because what we believe creates our reality. It creates our behaviors. It's what fuels us, these beliefs. It manifests itself through these behaviors and actions. And so by looking at the behaviors and the defense mechanisms, the coping strategies, you can actually identify, oh, I'm doing this. If I'm doing this, therefore I believe something. And you can reverse engineer it. This process is unconscious. Even if you were aware that you were doing some of this stuff, it's not your fault. It's what we're programmed to do. We're all doing it, myself included. But by integrating our shadow and coming into acceptance and wholeness, we get to make better choices, think better thoughts, feel better, more useful and aligned feelings. And you can catch yourself in the act and check yourself before you wreck yourself. So when I first started doing this work, I would often not catch myself until after the fact, and then I'd be like, oh crap, I just did that thing. And then it started to get easier, where I'd catch myself right as I was about to set fire to something. Oh, I'm doing the thing. Okay, do some tapping, do some eye movements, do some breath work, whatever. Catch myself. Okay, just take a beat, Larissa. And I was able to start making different choices, and now I catch myself before I do it. So, I mean, not to say that I don't still act out of pocket, but I'm only human. But I'm able to just totally modulate behaviors before that I would just be like, why did I do that? Cry myself to sleep on the bed. Why did I say that? Why did I act that way? Why did I blow that up? I literally had no self-control. So for some people, it might not be that extreme or severe, but you will absolutely be able to recognize at least one of these things in your life. And you can totally make different choices once you become aware of it. And again, you might get cringe. You might get cringe during this video where you're like, oh no, I totally do that. It's okay. We all do it. And also, most people don't know that they're doing this, or this is why they're doing it. They're totally acting from that unconscious autopilot plane. So you don't even have to feel embarrassed, because whatever. So I'm going to go through each type one by one. So we'll start with type 1, Daddy. Or, the reformer, the perfectionist. Ones prefer to see themselves as being conscientious and above the degenerate riffraff. They're proper, correct, and in integrity. Therefore, they cannot see themselves as lazy, foolish, wrong, messy, or bad. Of course, when we go too hard into the personality type's false belief, it creates a big ol' shadow. So their false belief is like, I'm in integrity, I'm perfect, I'm good, I'm right. Ones avoid outwardly expressing anger to remain objective and in control. Because expressing anger is bad, to be imperfect, incompetent, wrong, or out of control is death to the one. That's not them. That's not how they associate themselves. That's not what they identify as. This mechanism reinforces the one's ego because it assures them that they're right, proper, perfect, and correct. Therefore, their survival and identity continues. However, because the one is an anger/gut type, they're constantly churning irritation factories. So this is like a constant narrowing and constricting and controlling that is happening moment to moment, and that does not sound comfortable. If the one catches themselves in the act, or someone else does, it may increase the dissonance between the shadow and the unintegrated self. If they don't understand that it's just their personality bullshit, they don't hold grace with themselves and just take a beat. Because the one utilizes anger, they're unlikely to allow themselves to see themselves as being angry or incorrect or in the wrong or imperfect. Of course, self-aware ones can own that, but most people are not acting from that place. However, you're different because you're here. So how this can manifest as behavior. So reaction formation is what's typically known for the type 1's defense mechanism. Ones can express the opposite of their actual feelings and desires, and they do this to reinforce their ego as not being angry, being perfect, right, correct, proper, good, and expressing anger as bad, or what people who have no self-control do. And then because they have that anger, though, inside of them, they're going to be like channeling it, this unexpressed anger, into maybe like physical activities like going hog wild on cleaning, obsessively exercising, restricting food, or like restricting hedonistic delights. Maybe that's just like, I'm only allowed an inch of wine, or I don't know, perfectionist fixations, taking a red pen to their life. Correct, this is bad, no. So the criticality and judgmental concerns can be projected onto people around them, but for their own good. To the one, they're being responsible, doing the right thing, but to the person on the receiving end, they're being like hyper criticized, they're being hyper judged. And if you're like a type 1 for a parent, you need to like ease up on your kids. They also can do the whole thing of splitting, which is seeing things in black and white under stress. This is usually more under stress, where this is good, this is evil. And in super low health, this can lead to extreme behaviors like witch hunting, finger pointing, being the voice of God, judge, jury, and executioner, but they don't see it in themselves. So, of course, they're always the good one, and they're getting rid of the wickedness, or the bad thing, or the impure thing, the improper thing, the dirty thing. And just to remind you, these are extreme. These are sort of, some of these are going to be extreme. And I'm also not covering every single pattern of the type 1. And I am not covering any positives in this whole video for any of the types, because we're doing shadow work for this. We are looking at the monster shadow for this video. They also can employ rationalization to justify their self-righteousness. This is the most correct, right, or efficient way to do the thing. Therefore, I'm right and you're wrong. If you don't do what I say, it will be to your own detriment. So they're always in the right. They can like justify their own bad behavior because they're doing it for the good. Hypocrisy. So they can project their own denied desires, feelings, and even private behaviors by condemning the same desires, feelings, and behaviors in others. They know the right way to be, and you are not being it. They can become preachy about whatever they take issue with in order to unconsciously overcompensate for their secret bad behavior or naughty thoughts. This ties directly to shadow work because ones and one fixers can have a pungent shadow full of all kinds of misdeeds and dark desires, but be totally blind to them while criticizing others for the same thing.
So for example, just to give you like a frame for that, like the anti-gay politician who's having an affair with a man, or the barbiturate popping mom who wages a neighborhood campaign against drugs. They can also go into like sort of obsessive compulsive behaviors. So obsessively creating more order and rightness in their physical environment. So like I said, cleaning, organizing, minimizing, throwing stuff out. They can also apply this to their relationships, like really being controlling over people in their lives, trying to perfect them, trying to control them, get them to like be proper, follow the rules. And they can do this to themselves also because this is obviously their program that they're running. And they can go into perfecting mode in order to feel in control of something they cannot control, where they exert order onto their surroundings and right wrongs, like becoming obsessed, like I said, with cleanliness in their home or laying out rules that others must follow. So now we're going to go to type 2, the mummy, or the nurturer, the self-sacrificer. So twos prefer to see themselves as being loving, nurturing, selfless, self-sacrificing, and caring towards others, concerned and kind-hearted. Therefore, they cannot see themselves as selfish, self-centered, giving to get, cold, heartless, or bad. Of course, when going too hard into the personality type's false belief, it creates a big old shadow. Twos avoid feeling selfish or needy by refusing to directly ask to get their needs met or receive what they truly wish from others. Twos unconsciously repress these needs and desires to reinforce their type's ego because it assures them that they are self-sacrificing, they're needed, they're good, and they're loving. Therefore, their survival continues. If the two catches themselves in the act, or someone else does, it may increase the dissonance between the shadow and the unintegrated self if they don't understand that it's just their personality's bullshit. So I'll be repeating this in a bunch of the slides, but it bears repeating because like if you're a 2 or you have a 2 fix and you're listening to this and you're like, oh God, I'm so embarrassed. It's like, not your fault. Like you don't know what you don't know until you know it. We're all operating out of this autopilot until we learn this stuff, right? And then it's like, okay, now I'm being conscious of it. So, because the 2 utilizes pride, they are unlikely to allow themselves to wallow. So, pride is the 2's vice, if you will. They're unlikely to allow themselves to wallow or even acknowledge any wrongdoing or selfishness on their part. It's the other person's fault. The 2 is blameless. So, how this manifests behaviorally. So, repression is the defense mechanism that's attributed to 2s, like so twos hide their needs and quote unquote selfish desires from themselves in order to maintain their caring and indispensable self-image. They use repression to avoid feeling needy, unnecessary, or rejected. Because of their type structure, they can't see how they're in need of anyone else's help or how they are anything other than self-sacrificing. They cover up these feelings with flattery to the other people, offers of help, being intrusive with their help even, and overly nice. So they can be like if you want to picture like the mom who like just will not stop showing up with like food and stuff, where it's like, honey, are you okay, honey? I did your laundry. Oh, honey, I tidied your room while you were in the shower. Like it's just like that kind of intrusion where it's like, oh, I can help you. And like a problem is actually, I didn't put this in the slides, but if you have like if you're a 2 for a parent, you gotta like allow your kids to stand on their own. Otherwise, they become codependent on you, and that makes for like a totally useless adult. And I'm speaking from experience. Okay, so 2s prioritize others' needs in the hope someone will prioritize theirs. But then when that happens, the 2 goes into rejection mode and wants to get back into position as the helper, as that's where their identity is invested. So they want that care. They want someone to do something kind for them, but then it threatens their ego. So again, like these are the personality traps. The 2 projects their needs onto those around them by being overly helpful or intrusive. Like I said, if they feel like they're not being appreciated, though, or getting their needs met, they can actually move into more covertly like punishing behaviors to the person they keep giving to, or subconsciously create situations in which the person might be forced to give back to them. So what do I mean? The 2 wants help cleaning from their spouse. So they overclean to the point where they become ill or they injure themselves so that their partner is forced to pick up the slack or show them care for all of their self sacrificing. Of course, they didn't ask for the help. They literally unconsciously created a situation in which they had to receive help because it's in their ego that they can't ask for it. This sounds crazy if you don't understand like how beliefs work or the law of like the laws of the universe and stuff, but this is absolutely a thing. People don't do it on purpose, but it absolutely manifests. And this can also manifest in ways like them offering to do something, the two offering to do something, and then making the other person wait to receive if they're feeling secretly resentful or not shown adequate appreciation or having their self image adequately validated. So, yeah, they can make the person wait, or they can say they're going to do something and then not do it. They can make a big show of helping and then not actually help. um, in low health, twos can use quote unquote identification to take on the needs and worries of those around them as if it's theirs. They become fretful over other people's problems. Anything that hurts their loved one hurts them. And it becomes covertly narcissistic, wherein they can make someone else's suffering about themselves, but also they can do that, like, twos can do that about, like, their kids or their loved ones' wins. So, like, if it wasn't for my help, they wouldn't have accomplished that. And they can secretly or not so secretly want undue credit for quote unquote help they've provided, whether it was solicited or not. So, like I said, sometimes they insert themselves where they're not actually requested, and then it's like, well, see what I did for you. It's like, I didn't actually need your fucking help. So, twos use reframing in collaboration with repression. So they can reframe their intentions to maintain a pride in their pure and loving intentions, and reframe others' intentions too, lest it burst the sugar coated bubble that they're desiring to live in or reflect back to them that they're unwanted. So, like, for example, like their kid is like, fuck off, like, don't touch my fucking laundry, mom, like, go away, I want your fucking help. Though they can reframe that in their mind, like, later, like moments later, and be like, la la la, oh, he's just being silly. I'll just come back and do his laundry later. Each personality type is doing its own version of hell. So if you're not the types and you're listening to these and you're like, what the fuck is happening? Just wait till it's your turn. Okay. So type 3, the shapeshifter star, the shapeshifting star. Threes like to see themselves as impressive, competent, successful, and admired or valued for what they do or are. Therefore, they cannot see themselves as losers, failures, or less than others. Of course, when going too hard into the personality type's false belief, it creates a big old shadow. Threes avoid feeling like a failure or worthless by adapting to external ideals, competing, and striving. Threes unconsciously use identification to reinforce their type's ego because it assures them that they're valuable, worthy, admired, and successful. Therefore, their survival continues. If the three catches themselves in the act, or someone else does, it may increase the dissonance between the shadow and the unintegrated self if they don't understand that it's just their personality's bullshit. Because the three utilizes deceit, that's their vice, deceit, they are unlikely to allow themselves to own their failings or true feelings if it interferes with the image they're projecting. So 2, 3, and 4 are image types, and they're all projecting a specific way of being that they want to be seen as, or they want to see themselves as. So how this manifests in behaviors. Threes use identification, so this is the defense mechanism that's associated with threes, by unconsciously assimilating with the other. They use this to avoid feeling like a failure. How this shows up is that they take on the traits, characteristics, attributes, aesthetics, preferences, values, and mannerisms of important people in their life, in groups, people they see as valuable, could be like a mentor, someone they look up to, and those that they admire or envy. And they do this to create an image of success to themselves and or others. So some threes are more focused outwardly, and some threes are more just kind of trying to do it for themselves, but they're still taking on all of that information from the external. So they also do denial and projection. So threes can blame others for their failures or what isn't working for them, offloading image fails onto others to distance themselves from shame. So threes also shame type, like 2 and 4. Just like they can take on other people's traits, behaviors, stories, they can offload the same things onto other people as well. I don't know how widely that's attributed to threes, but I have personally witnessed it multiple times, so that's why I included it. They also employ deception, so this ties to their vice. This collection of traits is their self image and where their ego and self worth resides. And because their external sources and what is valued may change, it can give threes a shapeshifter quality depending on who or what they're surrounded by, what they value, what they do. And of course, like that can change, right? Underneath this layer of shiny baubles is still a shame type. And so without this sometimes fragile self image being upheld, they're but a raw, shameful nerve. Because of this, they can lose contact with their own internal compass, needs, desires, and their authentic self. They prioritize what gets them positive hits and bolsters their ego slash self image. They can be totally asleep to this inner incongruence and be deceiving themselves, especially in lower levels of health. They can also go into behaviors of numbing and workaholism. So threes can use numbing so they don't get stuck in the emotional swamp and become unproductive. They can power down the I'm a failure, I'm upset, I'm emotional aspect and power up the drive to override emotional slop that might get in their way. Unless, of course, like threes will use emotions. Like, so let's say that like they're a creative three, then like they might lean into it, or they're in an unhealthy spiral. They might actually go hard in the other direction and just like kind of spiral out of control if like they've reached like peak burnout. But for the most part, they're going to be going back into this sort of automation mode, this competency, like cutting off from the feelings mode. So they might override this with going hard into working around the clock. They can also go into substances like drinking a lot, shopping a lot, spending a lot, or doing something flashy that bolsters their self-image. So going on some trip and like putting it all on Instagram so that everyone knows they're successful if they've had like a hit to their self-esteem. Also, competition. Threes can get caught up in competition using others as a stepping stone or a way to boost their own image by comparison. So, see how much better of a job I'm doing than Ted? They might do this to the point where they end up chasing someone else's dreams, though, and totally shooting themselves in the foot. So that's like a caution for threes, is like because they can get so turned on by like competition and like the thought of like, outdoing someone and being seen as like the shiny, the star. They can end up competing for something that they don't even really want to do. So that's sort of the great tragedy of not being present with these patterns. It's like you could spend a couple years doing that and then realize it and be like, what the fuck? So type 4, the disdainful depressive, the one that is romanticized to hell and back in the Enneagram communities and often mistyped. If you're in this workshop and you're typing as a 4, there's a chance that you are not. But you might have a 4 fix, so this will still apply to you. 4s like to see themselves as separate, uniquely flawed, deep, and the special exception. Therefore, they cannot see themselves as mundane, relatable, ordinary, adaptable, or even for many 4s, functional. Of course, when going too hard into personality types false belief, it creates a big ol' shadow. So this is a point I just want to drive home for anyone who types as a 4 that might be in here, is like, this is a whole big piece of it, is that like 4s see themselves as flawed and dysfunctional and separate. Like this is the overriding thing. And they're not doing it to like get along. They're not doing it to put themselves beneath other people or to be like, like the underdog or the outcast. They literally are doing it just like as a separation thing where it's like, you don't understand my pain. 4s avoid feeling mundane, ordinary, relatable, shallow, functional, or happy. 4s unconsciously self-sabotage and focus on the negative and what's frustrating to reinforce their type's ego because it assures them that they're deep, different, uniquely flawed, and unlike anyone else. Therefore, their survival continues. If the 4 catches themselves in the act, or someone else does, it may increase the dissonance between the shadow and the unintegrated self if they don't understand that it's just their personality's bullshit. Because the 4 utilizes envy, so not meaning like, I have to get a car just like Ted. I gotta get a nicer, newer car. Like that's the 3 style of envy. 4 style of envy is what's missing. I'll never have that. I'm not like those people. I don't get to be happy. I'll never like make it as a writer because I'm not a fucking phony. Like that's more how 4 envy shows up. So they're unlikely to allow themselves to see where they're functional, relatable, understandable, or even happy. They subconsciously craft a self image that rejects any quote unquote positive information about themselves that comes into conflict with this existing quote unquote negative image. So, like to every other type, basically, it's positive information that they're rejecting. It's like these phony compliments. Oh, I don't need your shallow compliment about my sweater, Gina. Like I don't need your help. I don't need your whatever. Because they have positively associated into a negative image. Like not meaning that they're like sitting around like cackling, rubbing themselves and being like, oh, I'm so happy that I'm so miserable. But it's just like how they identify as themselves. Like this is me. So how this manifests behaviorally. So introjection is the defense mechanism that is assigned to 4, although people like to contest this, but I have my own spin on it. So introjection is presented as absorbing another person's identity or feelings, so like a parent, and transferring it to themselves. However, it's more, in my opinion, it's more nuanced than that and more specific than that. For 4s. 4s aren't just taking in any old information. Like they're not just taking in an old messaging like, oh, that person said I'm a loser, so I'm a loser. They're unconsciously taking in evidence that they're broken, estranged, alien, fucked up, and damaged in a very specific way that they have taken to mean this is me. Like, so, I mean, this is a joke, but this is great news to them. While the external world may be giving the 4 fuel, their experience has almost nothing to do with the outside world. The outside world is just serving to fuel the 4's internal narratives. The 4 weaves these evidentiary mementos into a story about themselves. They identify with specific negative traits that reinforce that they are separate, rare, deeply flawed, so as to never quite be understood or capable of being happy and functional. Like they're living a romantic, tragic existence and you're not. So if your message is like, if someone close to them, or not someone close to them, someone was to be like, wow, you have really bad style, they're not gonna like go into some depressive spiral and be like, I have bad style, and then write some like poem about it. It's like, they're gonna more be like, what do you fucking know, loser? You know what I mean? So it's very specific introjections that feeds their self-image. So they do that introjection unconsciously as a way to cope with the pain of feeling broken, unwanted, dysfunctional, and different. They weave the negative narratives into their identity and shape it into a way that makes them feel in control of it, to project depth and meaning onto it versus someone or something outside of themselves creating their story and making it shallow. The more they associate into the negative state, the more dysfunctional they can become, and the more it supports their type's ego structure. So that's when they're like really overdoing their type and becoming just so like alien and like dysfunctional and tragic. Without these narratives, they feel naked and non existent. Because their self image is inherently negative, they are positively associated with being in a negative, frustrated, satisfied state. They also use idealization, like all frustration types. So, idealizing people or situations so frustration types are 1, 4, and 7. So, I didn't include it, I don't think, for the other 2, but 1, 4, and 7 all do this, but they all do it in their own way. So, I didn't incorporate every single behavior that a type can do, but this is just a general overview. So 4s idealize people or situations as a way to generate feelings to pull the 4 away from the mundane reality/experience. This idealization is a frustration pattern designed to keep them in a loop of disappointment and longing because nothing will ever live up to what they hope, something will always be missing, and the 4 can never truly actualize or be happy as a result. And if it is everything they've ever wanted, like if they get what they want, the 4 is likely to find something wrong anyway or create a problem where there is none. So if you actually know a 4, like they're probably self-sabotaging things that they want, like where because it just keeps reinforcing that narrative for them, which to like a lot of other types is just absolute lunacy. So as a result, the 4 might self-sabotage opportunities that would actually aid them in being functional, capable, happy, or get them what they claim they want. They may discard things, people, ideas, pursuits if they feel too easy, cheap, relatable, mundane, or keep churning up issues and provocations that will lead to them being able to say, see, I never get what I want, or I knew no one would understand. 4s also use a form of splitting. So just like 1s, 6s, 4s reject what's not me. So how 4s do it is different because they're more like just rejecting what is not me. And often they find what's not to their tastes or not me disgusting. So everything outside of like my inner like sanctum is shallow. Everything that's not in the frustrated realm that the 4 approves of is superficial, ugly, vapid, horrible. For the faceless masses, but not for the 4. So being at odds with reality helps reinforce their self-identity. I'm not like that, therefore I'm deep. So they're not using it in the same way that like a 6 does, where a 6 is more like, that's bad. That's bad, stay away from that. Like 4 is like, that's shallow and ugly. Ew. So because 4s are usually creative or self-identify with the idea of being an artist, writer, creative, their tragically romantic, broken, and disdainful views can be expressed through their art. They may overdo it in making it unpalatable or abstract. Or if they become popular, they may self-sabotage their own success or self-image by being provocative, turning on their fans, the public, becoming moody, self-destructive, or unpredictable. They'll likely move away from what's expected or desired by their fan base, even if they secretly desire an audience. Or maybe they'll overspecify how they present themselves and shroud themselves in mystery in a way that others cannot easily relate to. They can only bear witness to the 4's creations. So there are obviously famous 4s, but they are not like... you know, their fans aren't like, oh my God, Queen, I'm just like you. I mean, some fans are probably like over relating, especially probably 4 fixers or 4s themselves, maybe, if they'll allow themselves to positively identify with a celebrity. But yeah, it's not like the norm for, like, there's going to be an inner conflict. If a 4 becomes famous, there's going to be some kind of inner struggle that goes on. So type 5, I've lovingly titled Brundlefly. And if you're actually a 5, that won't be offensive to you, I don't think. 5s like to see themselves as insightful, competent, self-sufficient, independent, and objective. Therefore, they cannot see themselves as emotional, human, helpless, or dependent on others. Of course, when going too hard into the personality type's false belief, it creates a big ol' shadow. 5s avoid feeling dependent on others, helpless, depleted, or engulfed in the messy world. 5s unconsciously retreat inwards and withhold energy and information, detach and compartmentalize to reinforce their type's ego because it assures them that they are competent, objective, smarter than everybody else, and above the mortal coil. And this is what makes them feel safe. Now, you're going to get like 5s that do have like a real ego investment in being smart. They're probably not going to be bragging, but there's probably a level of condescension in 5s and 5 fixers, like with whatever their special interest is, because, you know, 5s can actually focus. 5s can actually learn things and retain information and get really specialized. I used to mistype as a 5. So a lot of the types who think that they're smart to mistype as 5. Because the 5 utilizes avarice, which is hoarding inner resources. It's not greediness, it's hoarding inner resources. So that's like withholding, that's like not sharing their insight, not sharing their life, not sharing their energy, not sharing their heart. They're unlikely to allow themselves to be put in a position where they are quote unquote needed for anything outside of the scope of their specific interests or competency focus, or entangle themselves with hot messes, which is people or situations. So this doesn't mean that like 5s don't get married or have kids or anything, but they're like probably not going to settle down with like a sexual 7 or something. Of all the types, this is maybe the one that is least likely to actually give a shit if they have a shadow, to be honest. So I don't know how many fives will actually do the exercises in the next part. So, how this manifests: isolation. Fives retreat and protect their inner sanctum from being invaded or picked clean by the outside world. They use isolation to avoid dependence on others or having to be interlaced with their chaotic whims and needs, which may disrupt what the five would rather be doing with their time, some kind of mental pursuit. They may design their entire lives to protect themselves against intrusion. And fives, so like fours, fives, and nines. So all the withdrawn types can be hypersensitive to I mean, even ones can, I guess, on some level, but probably amplified if there's like a stem happening where there's like a combo, one and five or four and five, five and nine, where they're like, they can be really disrupted by like loud noises, um, loud people, just like intrusive, um, big energy kind of events, anything like that. Detachment. So fives use detachment as a means to cope when they feel overwhelmed. They disconnect from and retreat from their own and others' unstable feelings. In order to feel competent and safe, they conserve their mental resources. They can cut all contact or need for the outside world. So, nines can do this. I mean, even sevens can do this because I've kind of done this a bunch of times. But other types can do this where they retreat from others. They can go into hermit mode where they're just like, fuck everybody. I'm going to hole up and just go away. But this is sort of like the five state of being. Fives use rejection methods of cutting off and compartmentalizing to ensure they're not swallowed up in the messy ass human bullshit of this humdrum experience. This may show up as minimizing their needs, so physical, relational, financial, emotional. They're the most likely to live in some kind of like secret off-grid tiny home. I'm not talking about like the ones in all the prepper groups that are like full of gardens and like crops and goats and like 50 like 100 cans of mountain house or whatever that stuff's called. But they're the ones who that has the like they have the bare minimum to survive, where they can focus on their studies or whatever their mental obsession is far away from other people. So they probably have like a drip, like some kind of old rusty pipe that just drips into their mouth over their desks, so they don't even have to get up. They like have like a bucket they poop in right beside it. Sorry, fives. Going a little bit overboard here. They can have totally hidden worlds within worlds that others know nothing about. Each world dangerously close to being lopped off at a moment's notice if the five sees no use for it anymore. They dump all of their energy into their main pursuit because it's where they feel safe and valuable and competent. And so the outside world interfering with that feels like an attack on their very existence. By overdoing this one area of competency, they can actually make themselves unable to actually be independent or functional because they only have like this one skill. So to them, they may seem overly competent, but to the outside world, they may seem like just bizarre and dysfunctional, like weirdos, where it's like, how do they even like feed themselves? Do they wash? Like, again, like I just say, I'm being reductive, and like tons of fives are like rich tech guys. But I don't know, it's kind of fun for me to describe fives like this, so take it or leave it. Fives use compartmentalization of emotions, energy, and relationships, separating their thoughts from feelings and putting people into boxes to be dealt with or utilized instead of truly connected to. This can have a dehumanizing effect on the people around them who don't want to only interact with the five when they have the inner resources or only interact with them on narrow and specific terms. By doing this, the five effectively shuts out having to deal with whatever they don't want to, but also hacks off pieces of their own heart, spirit, and humanity, which is the only true place to create and mine for the insights and independence they seek. So, like, I don't know. Like, I know a few fives, and like sometimes it's like almost like you feel like a test subject talking to them, where it's like a little computer interacting with you, where they're tabulating data. I think like all head types can be like this sometimes, but especially fives, where it's like, how are you today, human? And then they have some kind of query that will fill in some kind of spreadsheet that they have that they're working on. Type 6, Citizen Emo. Sixes like to see themselves as loyal, hardworking, just a regular person, one of the guys, one of the girls, authentic, responsible, fair, and connected to the family, community, tribe. So the vibe is I'm in the mud with everybody. Therefore, they cannot see themselves as bad, traitorous, pompous, or too good. Of course, when going too hard into the personality type's false belief, it creates a big old shadow. Sixes avoid feeling unsafe, uncertain, or abandoned in their attachments and support systems. So that can be like physical, group, or partner. So they want to feel safe. So it's like if they're like self-preservation oriented, like oriented to feeling safe in their physical world, it's like they want to know that they've got like their backup money, they've got enough money saved for an emergency, they have like all the band-aids, they have enough food in case the power goes out, like this kind of stuff. Or if it's like friends or groups, family, it's like they need to know like everyone's on the same page, like they'll rally, they'll support them if they need them. So sixes unconsciously seek security and safety, but they also seek dangers in order to get the security and safety. And they also seek truth, but because they're seeking truth, they're also seeking lies because they're trying to sniff out what's not true. And support systems. They can trust and rely on to reinforce their type's ego because it assures them that they're accepted, part of the tribe, safe, secure, supported, and prepared. Therefore, their survival continues. If the six catches themselves in the act or someone else does, it may increase the dissonance between the shadow and the unintegrated self if they don't understand that it's just their personality's bullshit. Because the six utilizes fear, that's their vice, and anxiety, they're unlikely to allow themselves to relax, ease up, stop hunting for discrepancies or what could go wrong. So that's what's in their shadow is relaxation, ease, trust, just trusting. I should add that. So how this manifests. Sixes project. They project their worst fears and worst case scenarios onto other people. They're always sniffing out danger in the world and in their connections. Who's being loyal? Who's up to no good? They can engage in investigative, gossipy behaviors, seeking out clues for their worst fears. Sometimes sixes actually go in the opposite direction to protect themselves. Like if someone in the midst is a gossip, then the six will lean away from them out of fear of getting caught up in their stuff. So sixes are sort of the pendulum type where they they do the things that they fear and they do the things that they like. It's like they sort of swing back and forth. So sometimes they project their own behaviors, feelings, and thoughts onto others, and then they fear being blamed or accused, which leads to the projecting. So sixes are the whistleblower type. So if anyone's like accusing anyone of anything, it's probably a six. But then they fear being accused and blamed. So again, it's this like pendulum that sixes do. And so that's also why it's really important for sixes to integrate their shadow. Just to like give themselves a break from all the swinging back and forth. On the flip side, they can project idolization, fantasies onto experts, simping people who they can put all their trust and outsource their thinking to. And they do this to create certainty within themselves. But then on the flip side again of that flip side, is that if those experts let them down or they suddenly do something that is like the six is like, no, that's bad. You can't do that, or that was wrong, and they won't own it, they won't own up to it, then the six can get finger pointy and like, I don't trust you, and then maybe they'll start looking for another system or they'll want to tear down whoever if the person did something really bad or in their mind really bad. They go into worst case scenario thinking. So projections can show up as predictions, where the six may anticipate the worst, and then by over-focusing on this negative outcome, they manifest it into reality. Their worst case scenario becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. See, I knew the basement was going to flood, or see, I knew you'd cheat on me. This churning distrust has them always on the hunt and never feeling safe, because if you're always looking for things that can go wrong, like, you will bring it into reality. Like, this is a law of universe. What you focus on expands. If you are constantly focusing on what could go wrong, what can go wrong will go wrong. So they also do splitting. So like the other types that do splitting, they can see things in black and white, good or bad. You're with me or you're against me. So their splitting is oriented more towards like group dynamics or like worst case scenario dynamics where it's like either it's I'm safe or I'm in danger. Sixes can be tribal and overly identified to their side. So whether that's ideologically, politically, religiously, or just in their general friend groups. So it's sort of like that, yeah, you're with me or against me kind of mentality at times, especially if it's like something that they really associate into, like on an identity level, like as their tribe. This is the good thing. I'm on the good guy's side. Like the people on the other side are bad guys. They outsource anxiety, so they can overdose on anxiety in order to reach equilibrium, meaning that they project their internal anxieties onto the outside world in the hopes that someone else will solve the problem for them, like constantly bringing people's attention to the negative or what could go wrong. And they can complain all the time. And they're covertly sometimes doing this because they want like someone to rescue them or to make it stop, like stop the bad man, and they cannot rest until someone else validates and matches their concern. So if you have like a friend, like a six friend who spins out, and you might like your tactic might just be like, oh my God, who cares? But they just want you to like agree with them. Yes, that is bad. They want, and they might also want you to help them though with the problem, real or imagined. So sometimes like six is the most paranoid type. It's worse if there's an eight in the mix. Eight and six together are a killer combo. They want help to deal with the problem, whatever the problem is, whether it's real or imagined, because it could be like a kernel of real, and then it could get a lot larger in their mind, and for someone else to assuage their fears. Sixes also can redirect overwhelming fears from one source onto another source that they feel is easier to manage. So, like, if there's something like really stressful going on in the outside world, they can redirect their fears towards loved ones, peers, bosses, where they don't know what to do with their anxiety. So then their anxiety just starts channeling at the other person, where it's like creating problems. They're reactive, they're blaming, rebellion. So sixes can get anti-authoritarian when their trust is broken, especially they're disappointed or they engage again in like splitting. So getting tribal, they can be mega social justice warriors and fight for what's right, but in doing so, they can totally lose perspective and go so hard in fighting for justice that they actually become the bad guy or fighting for whatever that cause is that they have aligned themselves with. Sixes can also be hypochondriacs with their anxiety, excessive worrying, creating symptoms and scenarios out of the ether. They can circle the drain, fixating on problem after potential problem. They can literally bring forth potential health catastrophe into reality with constant focus on it. So, just like the previous example, it's like self-fulfilling prophecy. This paranoia can manifest in many ways. Sometimes they're right though. So sometimes it's only going to be the six that actually notices the problem. So that's sort of also their secret superpower, but they can also get so carried away that it like, yeah. And self-deprecation. So they may also use self-deprecation or humor or like presenting as an underdog, just one of the people, I'm just like you guys, as a way to deflect being targeted or being seen as like a threat or too big for their britches by, more competitive types or assertive types, like 3, 7, or 8 perhaps. And they can project this onto others with like tall poppy syndrome or crabs in the bucket mentality. So that means like when someone's like putting down another person for like daring to like shine or try to like, you know, outgrow whatever the family wants. Like, oh, you think you're a big city man now? Or like, oh, you think you're going to be a movie star? Yeah, like it's probably a six that's saying that. So, type 7, the Mad Hatter hedonist or the enthusiast. Sevens like to see themselves as interesting, exciting, innovative, individualistic, creative, and fun. Therefore, they cannot see themselves as boring, normal, part of the grind, or a downer. Of course, when going too hard into the personality type's false belief, it creates a big shadow. Sevens avoid feeling trapped, limited, stifled, cut off, and bored. Sevens unconsciously seek new, interesting people, things, situations, interests to reinforce their type's ego because it assures them that they're fascinating, they're buoyant, original, compelling creatures. Therefore, their survival continues. They use novelty and excitement to make themselves feel full of more like novelty and excitement. Because the 7 utilizes gluttony, so gluttony is their vice, they're unlikely to allow themselves to stagnate for too long, moving on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. How this manifests. So this is, first of all, this is like basically the ADHD type, not that all 8 people with ADHD are 7s, but or have a 7 in their personality makeup, but yeah, it's like that kind of vibe. So 7s use rationalization, which means the 7 can subconsciously or consciously rationalize away shitty behaviors and dodge responsibility. They're usually averse to their specific flavors of what is painful and will reframe themselves up, and away from whatever the source of that pain is. Whether it's the guilt of doing something awful, or the fallout of saying something flippantly, or the consequences of a thoughtless action. They don't really like typically own their stuff, or if they own their misbehaviors, whatever trouble they get into, they're just like, yeah, I did that. Oops, sorry. La la la. They're especially prone to rationalizing if making the pain conscious means they're not able to do, be, or have something that they desire. They also use distraction. So again, so this kind of falls under the ADHD category. So this can apply to other types, but this is like inherent to the 7 type structure. They go into distraction seeking mode via hedonism, intellectual stimulation, adventures, extreme sports, partying, being totally manic and creating for 3 days straight without sleeping, shopping, drugs, whatever, when they want to avoid discomfort, pain, or boredom. Or they have like a deadline, or it's just like anything. So like when I say discomfort, it's not necessarily like, oh, I'm uncomfortable. It's like whatever feels limiting, whatever feels trapping. So that can literally be a job related thing. That can be a relationship. That can be like a freelance project that's taking forever. That can just be anything that just feels like a grind, like a boring, frustrating grind. 7s use repression to bury negative emotions in whatever flavor they despise and push away anything that makes them feel like they've been victimized. So 7s can be emotional. There's like, I hate the stereotype that 7s aren't emotional or deep, that they're shallow. I don't resonate with that personally. And they can be melodramatic, but it's in the flavor that they find the most interesting. So they're not likely to push into emotional pain that isn't something that interests them, if that makes sense. They're not here to be like a boring victim or to cry themselves to sleep every night over some loser dumping them. Anticipation planning. So they can over idealize an outcome to the point where they're more about getting the dopamine hits off the anticipation than actually doing the thing or seeing whatever their harebrained scheme is through to completion. They also have entitlement. So 7s can be massive brats about getting what they want. As frustration types, they can often they're often focused on what they don't have and what they want. So this is also similar to like 4s and 1s. It's like they want the ideal, but they don't have the ideal. They never have the ideal. They're always striving for it. They always feel like they don't have it. It's the Goldilocks thing. It's never warm enough. It's not right. So, but because they're an assertive type, they're more likely to actually chase after it, expect it to be given to them, demand it, push people out of the way to get it. 7s are also pleasure seeking and they're hedonists. So 7s reject that which is not pleasurable. That doesn't necessarily mean like orgasmic or whatever. It's just like whatever feels good to them because there's nothing in it for them. Like why would I do something that feels not amazing? Like it's hard to motivate a 7 towards something that's like obligatory or a grind. When 7s get into this like thank you next pattern, it can become impossible for them to actualize or stick to something long enough for them to enjoy the fruits of their initial excitement and labor. The sparkle fades and there's nothing tasty for the 7 to stick around and lick, so they're likely to just start looking for something else. rebellion. So, like sixes, sevens can also be rebellious and anti authoritarian, but their reasons for rebelling are likely almost always centered around freedom. So, because this relates to their feeling trapped, they seek freedom. So, they literally are fighting for freedom or freedom of expression. So, they're usually anti censorship, they're pro individuality, individual choice. Like, not to be reductive and say all sevens are spiritual and into libertarian beliefs, but a lot of them are. They can also just rebel for the hell of it if they're bored, or if there are like hot people associated with the cause, or there's like a sexy scene associated with the cause, or like a cool arts crowd. So type 8, the final boss. Eights like to see themselves as powerful and vulnerable, independent, intimidating, I don't give a fuck leaders. Therefore, they cannot see themselves as weak, under someone else's heel, being controlled, powerless, or soft. Of course, when going too hard into the personality type's false belief, it creates big shadow. Eights avoid feeling weak, vulnerable, powerless, small, or allowing anything to threaten them. Eights unconsciously deny vulnerabilities and weakness to reinforce their type's ego because it assures them that they are indeed powerful and no one can fuck with them or will fuck with them. Therefore, survival continues. Because the 8 utilizes lust, which is their vice, they're unlikely to allow themselves to be put in a position where they could be steamrolled, deprived, slowed down, or made small, or powerless, or vulnerable. So, like, I don't know how many 8s are into self-work, but I imagine doing this kind of stuff would actually be quite frightening to an 8, because a lot of self-work, a lot of this stuff involves allowing, surrender, trust. Like 6s have a thing with trust, but so do 8s, because it's like, I'm gonna like let down my guard. I don't think so. 6s will trust an authority figure. 6s will trust somebody that they built trust with, but 8s is like a lot harder. So I would be surprised if any 8 signs up for this. However, I'll share with you because you might have an 8 fix. And I don't want to stereotype. So if you're an 8, I welcome you. So how 8 behaviors manifest? Denial. 8s use denial by rejecting their own vulnerabilities or weaknesses. This can show up as denying emotions, fears, thoughts that don't serve the 8's ego identification of being powerful. They can also completely deny the existence of any perceived weak points that an enemy could use against them. If possible, they'll lop off anyone or anything that causes them agitation, like people, situations, or seems like a threat to their inner or outer sanctuary that they've created. So, like, I mean, this sounds like hyperbolic, like with the enemy part, like perceiving the enemy, but legit, like 8s are adversarial, so they are constantly auto seeking for anyone that's a threat to whatever is theirs. Like, whether that's like I don't know, I used to have a type 8 at like an 863 boss, and he was like totally paranoid about his bar. He had the whole place bugged. He would always listen in on us. So like that's one example, but it's an extreme example. But like 8s out in the world can be very like controlling, especially if they have a thing that's theirs, or like a friend group that's like, that's is my friend group, like I'm the big kahuna, or like with their partner. They also employ rejection and coldness, so they can view softness and receptivity as death. They can actually strangely be attracted to like softer types. Like a lot of 8s are really into like 2, 6, 9s, like as a tri-fixation. Like they're into 9s, they're into 6s. They like to be that protector role, and it doesn't feel threatening to them. So they're attracted to that as like the strong protector type, but they don't want to be that themselves. So if they weaken for a moment, they'll get screwed over or tricked. So I think that this is probably partly why they're attracted to that, because it's something that they can control and is not as threatening. And again, that's reductive, but just a general observation. So they also use their own version of reaction formation. So 8s can express the opposite of how they feel. So they can feel like really hurt, but act like they're emotionally impervious. You have no effect on me. You don't matter. If you've wounded their steel heart, you'll pay the price. Like the 7, they can deny victimhood, but they might personally feel quite slighted and seek revenge to get the ball back in their court, like to get the upper hand, the power back in their hands for however that person made them feel, or if the person took something from them or fucked them up in some way. Like there will be a price to pay. Like whereas like a 1 or a 6 maybe would seek like like police or something, but I think 8s are more likely to go street justice style. But like you're gonna find like it's gonna be like mob bosses and stuff that are gonna be 8s, like gang leaders and street justice. They also employ aggression, assertiveness. So 8s can take up space and project an air of confidence in order to pre-defend against would-be attacks. Showing up with this big bear energy, this chaos demon energy, ensues that no one will fuck with them and that they'll get away with what they want. Or they'll get what they want, rather. Well, both, really. Therefore, they can be domineering, bossy, and straight shooters, my way or the highway. They're also controlling. And they have like an energy of conquering about the whole thing where it's like, I'm the one in control, I'm the leader. And like I said, they can be paranoid. So, not, I mean, 8 and 6 together is the paranoid combo, but the way 8 core paranoia is, it is way more controlling because like it's like 6 8s are going to be more like pointing it out and like kind of rallying other people around, but 8s are going to be doing it themselves. Like, I'm going to pick you off one, but fucking one, like whoever's the threat. And it will obviously depend on their position or the situation. They can take on the role of puppet master or dictator to ensure things happen according to their plan. And they're not at the whims of someone else or under someone else's thumb. So they prefer to be the one with the thumb on others versus under someone else's thumb. If they're like, and for some reason, like, in a more like a lower role, like a company or something, they're going to be wanting to work their way up pretty quickly. And like figuring out who's the weak link, whose job they can take. Justification. If they want the job, that is. So I just clarify that. If it's like a role, if it's like a company they want to work their way up in. They also use justification. So 8s can be impulsive with their anger and feeling absolutely justified in it. The desired effect can be to crush whatever is pissing them off, whoever is pissing them off, with their brutality and force. So it's just like, I'm just going to keep expanding and crushing and destroying until you just stop or don't exist anymore. I'm painting quite the vivid picture of 8s. So a regular 8's probably not this bad. So type 9, soothing squish, or like the peacemaker. So 9s like to see themselves as chill, empathetic, caring, supportive, and deep. Therefore, they cannot see themselves as provocative, disruptive, thoughtless, aggressive, or selfish. Of course, when going too hard into the personality type's false belief, it creates a big ol' shadow. 9s avoid feeling in conflict and stressed out. 9s unconsciously seek to be in harmony and flow with those around them and their environment, to reinforce their type's ego because it assures them that they are chill, harmonious, and connected. If the 9 catches themselves in the act, or someone else does, it may increase the dissonance between the shadow and the unintegrated self if they don't understand that it's just their personality's bullshit and it's not actually like bad. Because the 9 utilizes the vice of sloth, they are unlikely to allow themselves to just get after it, make demands, make bold moves. Yo, 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 give it to me. Yo, I hate you. We're breaking up. They're not like doing any of that kind of stuff. So how this manifests. Narcotization / dissociation. So 9s use narcotization, which means to like numb, to ease discomfort. So, I mean, this can actually mean with like substances. A lot of 9s smoke weed. Not to say that all 9s do, but there's a lot of 9s that like to smoke their weed. But it can also manifest just like existentially, where they can just like fall asleep at the wheel of life, outsourcing decisions, independence, physical needs to others. Like they're just not even checked in. Like they can just check out. They're not happy. They're just not present. They're just not paying attention. They're off in fantasy land. And it can show up as losing themselves in mindless side tasks instead of just dealing with problems. They can dissociate from problems by numbing their heart and mind to what's in front of them if they don't want to deal with it. They'll just hope it resolves itself without any involvement, without the nine's involvement or any disruption to the nine's existence, because they don't want to deal with conflict, what's going to happen, the fallout. Oh my God, this person's going to get angry at me, and then what will happen? Rather just not deal with it. Nines repress their anger in favor of keeping peace. They can be really annoyed and not able to verbalize it until it reaches a crisis point for the nine. So the other person may actually be like totally shocked when it happens, especially if the nine kept telling them that everything was fine. And I've been on the receiving end of nines flipping out multiple times when it's like, well, I was like, I didn't even know you had a problem with me, like, and now you're like screaming at me about something I didn't even know was like doing. It's like it builds up and then they freak out and then they go back into just like forgetting it happened, kind of. Passive aggression. So again, I'm being reductive. These are just some of the pattern types, and these are all negative, quote unquote negative. So these are just behaviors basically that I'm drawing to your attention to address, so that it's like I'm going to make different choices. So there will be like prompts on this at the end, which we'll get to in a moment, but also like I have integration exercises in the next part. So you can do those if you're a nine. Like these aren't like written in stone, like this is how thou shalt act if thou's a nine, or for any of the types. It's just like these are usually how these beliefs express themselves as behaviors and coping strategies, but they don't have to be the only coping strategy. They're just like the autopilot strategy. So, passive aggression. Nines express how they feel indirectly and hope the person picks up on their subtle cues and without them having to generate conflict. So, this might be conscious or unconscious. Like, I think that goes both ways. A lot of it can be unconscious, or they're like half aware that they're doing it. This can also just slip out subconsciously, like I said, so through offhand comments, looks, tone, behavior, or just like taking a really long time to respond, or like, yeah, okay, sure, I'll do it. Oh, okay, if you want to do it. Or sighing, like, oh my God, nines and they're sighing. Or like vaping, where they just suddenly start stress vaping, and it's like, do you want to talk about something? And when confronted with it, they can recede into a mist and say nothing's wrong. No. Or they want you to like literally be like, something wrong. No. Is it this? No. Do you want me to do this? Okay. So nines want you to be their psychic medium. Nines can also use positive reframing, not unlike seven, but theirs is more used as a numbing agent, like smoothing out a dire situation so that it's not as stressful, or like other people's malintent, rudeness, or shitty behavior so it doesn't result in conflict or upset. So they can get upset and like have some kind of like little fantasy where they like told them off or something, but then it just sort of dissipates and they let it go. So outsourcing. So nines often give their power away instead of asking for what they want or expressing themselves without being prompted. Like I said, they want you to read their minds. So they can become disappointed when others fail to mind read or intuit their needs without them having to assert themselves or vocalize it. So the nine wants you to ask how they're doing. They don't want to tell you. The nine wants you to ask about this thing. They don't want to have to offer it up themselves. They want you to show that you're interested. But if you're a nine and you're listening to this, like you can just share that. You don't need to be prompted. You can just share it. So nines also engage in self-forgetting because nines can dance around their location in order to keep the peace and not lose connection. So their location meaning their opinions, what they want, what they don't want. And this is not on purpose. They often just don't actually know it. They can forget what they want or how they really feel about something, especially if this becomes like a constant response. And it can be like sometimes nines might fall into this behavior if they're around a lot of reactive or assertive types, and then they just sort of go with whatever that person's doing because it stresses them out more to have to really like assert what they want. So sometimes it's easier to just go with the flow, but then they get carried away with somebody else's current. So nines also use merging. So like threes, nines merge with the people around them, often taking on their interests, aesthetics, values, and even mannerisms. However, the nine isn't doing it to become an ideal and compete for validation the way like a 3 might be doing it. They do it because they over identify with the idealized other to create harmony and melt into them. So it's more of like a, yeah, let's like vibe together. Oh, you like that? Okay, I like that too. Like it's kind of more motivated by a sort of innocent and sweet subconscious thing where it's just, I'm going to dissociate into you. Sevens and nines can both procrastinate and get lost in multiple fantasies of possibilities, but the difference is that seven is likely to taking an active, assertive approach and throwing spaghetti at the wall, whereas the nines' dreams can fade away if they don't have another person holding them accountable, or like a job to show up for, or something external to motivate them and get them through that, get them into that like get them through the hump. But also once nines get going, they can just autopilot do it. So it's more just like making whatever that thing is feel the vibe, like where it becomes just safe, it becomes the autopilot. And I didn't want to forget this one, nines ghost. So instead of just saying no, often nines will be vague and give a maybe or sure if they don't know their location in the moment, or they feel pressured and they need to think about it, or they don't want to rock the boat. And then they'll just disappear when followed up with. They'll just hope that you forgot or you don't follow up with them if they don't really want to do it. And literally, like, I think people end up, like, a lot of nines just end up in relationships because they don't know how to say no. No, I don't want to date you. So then they just keep hoping that the other person will just, like, end the relationship for them. So if you're a nine and you're in the shadow workshop, this is your call to like really fucking locate yourself and step into your power and define your yeses and nos and express them. So here are some prompts. And there will be a workbook uploaded. Did you cringe at any of the behaviors listed? Did you recognize any of these in yourself? Write out which ones you recognized. No judgment. It's not you. It's just behaviors created out of your personality's false belief. So because we have a type in each center, so the heart center is 2, 3, and 4, you likely related to 2, 3, or 4. Because we each have a type in the gut center, 1, 9, and 8, you likely related a bit at least to 1, 9, or 8. And then in the head center, 5, 6, or 7. So you probably related to one of those as well. And one of those will be your core type. If you don't know your type, that's totally fine. You can just see what comes up. Maybe you can go back over, do I do any of these things? But yeah, there should be at least 3 types that you at least somewhat relate to. Which is great news, right? Because that was just an absolute avalanche of compliments and for every type. So now unpack these behaviors. Maybe even some other stuff came up for you while I was reading that. Maybe you're like, oh, I don't do that, but I do this. So make sure to write those down. Just give a little think. Maybe scroll through it if you have to. Just figure out. Actually, maybe I'll put all of these in the workbook. And then maybe you can highlight it then. Okay, which ones do I do? Which ones do I not want to do anymore? Because this sucks. And now, like, so when you're doing this too, like, go back to the situation like in your mind, or like close your eyes and just think about it, and like think about what you were feeling at the time when you last did those behaviors. Like you can do them each one by one, and what was running through your mind, and what did you need to know in that moment to feel totally safe and to make a different choice. So just because we did 9 a moment ago, so like 9s, it's like, okay, someone asked me to help them run this really corny event that I really didn't want to do, but I said I would anyways. And then I was stressed about it all week, and then I got sick and I ghosted on them and I didn't go, and then they got really mad at me. So what was going through your mind when that happened? Okay, well, at the beginning I didn't want to upset my friend. Okay, well, but then like the end result was you upset your friend worse. So go back to that. What did you have to like know to feel safe to make a different choice in that moment? So maybe at the root event. So, well, I had to know that my friend wouldn't hate me if I said, I actually really don't want to do this. Okay. Could you just trust that your friend won't hate you for not wanting to do something? And if your friend won't be your friend because you don't want to help them with some dumb event, then they're a shitty friend. Um, so it's just like this kind of thing. So just like working backwards, re-engineering it. Like imagine if you had said, actually, you know what? I'd rather eat glass. Or, you know what, actually, I think I have another thing that day, even if you're fibbing a little bit. Or, you know what, I really need like a day off. I really just want to spend that night reading. Um, or I just really hate your other friends and I don't want to have to spend an evening with them. And just be honest. Just say what you really feel or say what you feel like saying. That's a no. And then your friend says, oh, okay. Okay, that's okay. And that's it. That's it. And then it's over instead of it taking like a whole week. So you can take, yeah, any of those behaviors and just write out, like, what else could I do instead? What do I have to know or believe to be able to do that instead? How can I catch myself in the moment next time? So, in the upcoming techniques, there will be some loosening and neutralizing that goes on. So, that will actually really help. But brainstorming, like, and using the shadow workbook from the very first part too, like, what about this feels dangerous to me? What about what about existing in this way and making this different choice feels unsafe to me? And pushing into that, why does that act is that actually unsafe? Or am I just making it seem unsafe because of my personality bullshit? Or maybe something happened when I was like 7 years old, but that doesn't even exist anymore, right? So just like treating this like an explorer, like you're being curious with zero self-judgment, just brainstorming, just treating it like you're on an adventure, a mental exploration. You're rewiring your own life. You're changing your story. You are rewriting your narrative right now while you do this.